Let me convert you to co-host, Ozzie, and you'll have control of your camera. There you go. You should be able to turn it on now if you want.
All right. How do I look?
Fabulous as ever. To use your word, effervescent as always. As a mentor, whether he realizes it or not. He's been very, very influential in my own brokering career and in my life since 2008 when we first met. And it's a gentleman named Ozzie Jurock. Ozzie runs, he runs all kinds of different little businesses in the real estate investing world. He's written several books. We can see the one behind him, Trendsetters, Real Estate Action. I'll let Ozzie elaborate on that too, but I've read all your books, Ozzie, and it's always great content. But what I'd like to do is I'll tell a quick little story about how we met, and then I'll let you back it up and give us some of your history as well. You know, in the years leading up to where we met. And it was 2008. I'd been a broker for about 10 minutes. And I went down to this event called the World Outlook Conference at the Westin Bayshore Hotel. And Ozzie was speaking there to a room of, I think it was like 1,500 people. And of course, 2008, there was this little economic situation going on at that time. And everyone was doom and gloom. The end of the world is upon us. And that event is largely stock market driven. And Ozzie's kind of the one shining real estate light in that whole sea. And of course, all those folks, the audience in general, was very down on real estate. They were down on everything. The end of the world was upon us as we knew it. And as I say, Ozzie was this beacon of optimism, and I would say logical optimism, gave a great presentation. And I'm walking out into the main lobby, and there, walking alone, all to himself, is this Ozzie Jurock gentleman. And I just stopped, and on the way down, my brother-in-law laughed at me for going to this event. My brother-in-law was also a brand new broker, and I said, well, you should meet me over there. And he's like, why? What am I going there for? I said, well, I want to go see Ozzie Jurock speak. And he's like, what are you going to do? Get Ozzie's mortgage application? What's the point? And no, I didn't get a mortgage application from Ozzie. I did get many, many referrals, which of course I'm greatly appreciative of. And I stopped. I said, Ozzie, I just want to say it was great to listen to your presentation. And we had a couple of words, and Ozzie quickly, he's got an arm around me and walks me over to his booth. And hey, we have this group called the Real Estate Action Group. We get together every month. We talk about what's actually happening in the market. And it was like real information on what's really, like, behind the headlines, like what's really happening. What are the stats? What's really going on in the streets? And a room full of property investors. And as I say, and then at one point, the regular mortgage individual didn't show up. I was sitting in the front row, as I always did at different events. I had introduced myself to the organizers, Ozzie in particular, as I always do at these different events. And Ozzie kind of looked around and went, where's our guy? Oh, well, Dustin, you're a mortgage broker. Why don't you get up and say a few words? And then, as I recall, Ozzie had to pry my hand off the microphone because I discovered I quite liked the microphone. And the rest, as they say, is history. Yeah. So Ozzie, again, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And I think the world absolutely needs, in the real estate world, the broker world, more than ever needs that little bit of dose of optimism in the face of, you know, terms like the Furrow Cliff and 18% market drops and all the rest of it. But before we get into that, I mean, one of the lines I wrote down was, we've seen this movie before, but you've maybe seen this movie a few more times than I have, or some of our newer brokers watching this have seen it. Why don't you take us back a little bit through your career and when have we seen this? When have you seen this?
I guess, let's face it, all you're trying to say is that how old I am, and let's go back 50 years and what happened then. Well, I first of all, I believe that we live in the world's most unreported inflation of all time. So once you can digest that and saying, what are you talking about? It's deflation ahead and depression and all that ahead. Then you know, if you can't digest that, just give me a few minutes to explain it to you. So first of all, I'm not some sort of optimistic, hello, the world is wonderful kind of guy. I had the privilege of running some very large corporations. One of them was Royal LePage. At the time when I was the president of Royal LePage, we had 10,000 employees, 7,000 in sales. And tell me about tough times. I mean, in 1987, we had a stock market crash, and we were really very, very successful. We were the #1 brokerage in Canada, and particularly the #1 brokerage that owned all of its own offices. I don't think that's ever been repeated, exactly what we did. Anyways, we had money too because we were making profits. And I had the best advice money could buy in 1987 after this terrible crash. And when we listened to them, we were told we're going straight to hell in a handbasket, but meaning we had to really bring down the employees. I laid off 1,000 people. I didn't have to lay off because we were within 6 months out of it. And not only that, the commercial brokerage was never a large portion of any pension fund portfolio. They just didn't like commercial real estate. From 1987 on, the increases that pension funds now have in real estate increased from the original 2% to 6 to 8% because they need the income. The point is, the very fact of the end of the world turned out to be very beneficial to real estate. But you don't have to go back only to 1987. I mean, in 1975, the headline in Vancouver was, "Realtors are prowling like hungry tigers." And we will never see these prices again. And the average price was $45,000. I wrote my book, Forget About Location, 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 in 1978. And I made the point that if we kept on printing money like we did from 1965 to 1998, and the average price in 1998 was $278,000, if we kept on doing that for the next 35 years, every house in Vancouver would be worth $4 million. Guess what? 2 years ago on the west side, it actually was $4 million. And that's through all the pestilence and problems that we have. Every time I have a speech, I have a slide where I show, you know, the Russian crisis, a Russian flu, a Mexican crisis, a currency crisis. There's always a crisis of some sort that's trying to scare us to death. And so, should we be worried? Am I saying this is not an unusual situation? Maybe. But it's absolutely nothing to do with you and me in this business. Because history is on our side. I mean, let's face it, I could have bought gold. And what did gold do for me? And I find it mind-boggling how people are always talking about gold. In 1980, $100,000 worth of gold, had $100,000, you could also have bought a $100,000 house. And that $100,000 house in Vancouver is now 1.8 million, and gold just barely made $2,000 an ounce. Barely. It actually took 27 years to go back to 800. Think about it. The patience of the gold investors, and since 2007, it's gone up a bit here and a bit there. And you're forgetting leverage. You would have never bought that $100,000 house cash. You wouldn't have cash, but maybe 5,000 down would have made you $1.5 million. End of discussion, because it went through all of the terrible times. Look, in 1989 to 1991 in the United States, we had the largest banking crisis ever. We don't talk about it anymore because we used to call it the savings and loan. And to us, a savings and loan is like the credit union, but not in the US. In the US, there are 5,000 banks with one branch. Here we have 5 banks with 1,000 branches. The point is that when they all went broke, because 1,100 banks or so, don't hold me to the exact number, but it was over 1,000 banks went actually under. And the American government created what was called the Resolution Trust Company. And they had to buy all of the stuff that the banks had that they weren't supposed to have, according to the Resolution Trust Company. The non-core assets had to be sold, and so they did. And so among those, on behalf of the company I was working for, then I purchased a real estate company that was purported to be worth $10 million for $600,000. And I'm only mentioning that because the head office was in San Diego, and I went into San Diego in 1991, and they said, "What is this Canadian? No, doesn't he know we're down 35%? It is the end of the world." And I said, "Hey, San Diego is Mexico without it being Mexico, right? If you sell somebody a house today, in 5 years, they'll kiss you here on this cheek. And if you buy one yourself, your significant other will kiss you on the other cheek." And they all said, "Well, yeah, God, no, he must be from Canada, somewhere very cold. What does he know?" And yet it was incredible. I purchased a property myself on the ocean for $78,000, which went up to an incredible $3 million. Did I keep it? No. With all my good talking, I sold it at $190,000.
We've all been there. We've all been there.
Well, but that's it. You're right, Dustin. We've been there, and yet we're still scared of the future, right? And so I think with us in this business, you almost have no right to be miserable. You have no right to be fearful. It's not your job, anyways, to look at the future. Who knows about the future? Galbraith says, you know, there's people that don't know, and then there's people that don't know they don't know. And none of our heads of health and medication and in industry. And, I mean, I look at some of my former heroes have turned to the dark side where they see all these dark things. The reality is, at any of your clients 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, in the middle of the biggest crisis ever, if they did nothing but buy a house, not in the best areas of Toronto, not in the best areas of Vancouver, just any kind of property, because of leverage, they would have made more returns on their investment, a better environment for their family, more confidence they would have had in the future by having their own home than any other investment. And guess what? You and the realtor are in the middle of that. And they look to us constantly to give them confidence. And what do? We bemoan facts.
Yeah.
I mean, we always have some reason why we should be miserable.
Well, and so Ozzie, I mean, like everything you just went through there, of course, I've heard different bits and pieces and it elaborated on and different stories attached to it over the years that we've spoken and the years that I've attended the different monthly meetings. I think I went 7 years solid. I think I maybe missed one a year, if that. Yeah. But I did everything I could to be there because of all those things that you touch on. We've been here before. We've seen these challenges. And, I have a client who, one of his clients recently sold a $500,000 property and wants to buy gold. And he phoned up, to say where should I store my gold? Like, I'm going to buy $500,000 worth of bullion, where should I keep it to keep it safe? And, I just shook my head and I thought of, one of your lines all the time as well, Ozzie, like, hey, it's great. You're going to buy a bunch of gold. Are you buying a gun too? Because if you don't buy the gun, somebody else has the gun, they take your gold. And like, what kind of mindset is that? You can't live inside your gold. You can't rent your gold out and get a monthly revenue stream from it. It's very confusing that people go into that mindset. I mean, it's like you say, real estate has proven over and over and over to be safe and to be the smart investment, to be the prudent move. But we always seem to tell ourselves a story. And even you and I have that same challenge. I mean, I bought a loft down in Gastown in '95. My wife and I bought it we put $7,000 down on a $100,000 loft, $107,000 loft. We paid $7,000 extra for the parking space. And we could have bought 2 more parking spaces because they had extra parking spaces they couldn't get rid of. And of course, we sold it for $168,000 or something like that. Thought we were geniuses. And of course, today it's worth $650,000, and it's renting for $2,500 a month. So as much as we embrace the logic of it, we don't always hang on to things. And I don't know about you, Ozzie, but we sold 100% based on emotion. It was an emotional state that we were in that caused us to sell that property. And we both look back and think.
But we don't want to be Pollyanna. I mean, there are concerns in the world. We can't just sort of slough it off. But the thing is this, that I'm basing this on a basic philosophy. I'm not an economist. But I'm looking at the world and say we live in the world's most unreported inflation of all time for a long time. Mm-hmm. And so Milton Friedman says inflation is primarily a monetary phenomenon. Now I have his slide on the front of my presentation. Every time we have, and our meetings are usually in the fall and the spring, we have 600 attendees. And they're all paid to be there. They don't come for the free coffee. They're strong. We have 10 speakers. We give them what we believe to be the facts. And I mean, it's not all real estate that's good. Certainly when you look around in this market, what real estate there you shouldn't buy, there's a lot of that too, but that's not the point. The point is, the reason why I believe that real estate values have gone up and asset values of all kinds have gone up is because of this inflation. People say, oh, well, Ozzie, the inflation is 2%. Really? Have you bought a piece of camembert lately? The same camembert that was $8 3 years ago is now 13. People say, well, you eat expensive camembert. No, that's not the point. The idea is that everything that you go and buy is up higher than 2%. The crazy thing is we have headline inflation and core inflation and all this kind of inflation. Well, I'm very simple. I have an asset price inflation and our costs are going up totally. On your parking meter in Toronto and Vancouver, you used to be 9 to 5 days a week. By moving it from 9 to 10, 7 days a week, that's inflation of prices to less money that I have left by the
Oh,
parking.
no, but the price didn't change, so there's no inflation. Parking still
Exactly.
costs the same amount.
Exactly the point, right? So everything of value, everything that we pay for is going up higher. The interesting thing is the CPI in Canada is so out of whack because each time they took this inflation basket, I call it the Volcker basket in 1981, when Volcker, the head of the Fed, then tried to wring out inflation, he brought in 16 and 17% interest rates. You want to have fun? Try and place mortgages at 16% and make it work, right? Or sell real estate. I mean, we had massive. I'm as a president of Royal LePage, I'm on national TV and I say 12.5% is a good rate for the family. And I believed it. And today we have 2% and we say to people, oh, I'm not sure whether you should buy anything. Run, don't wait, you know, in terms of certainly the interest you pay and also how much money that means every month you put in your own jeans. You know, on a $300,000 mortgage at 3%, $1,400 a month, $700 goes into your savings account technically as you build equity.
Yeah,
Anyways.
we had an economist give a presentation in March that unfortunately the roadshow got canceled, so only a few hundred brokers really got to see it. But one of his key points that he made in his presentation, and this is a very intelligent individual, he said we have a principal pay down problem. Like our mortgage payments are out of whack. We're paying them down too fast. Too much of our payment is going to principal. And that's having a negative drag on the economy. And he was making the argument that amortizations should in fact be extended back out to allow people to have more monthly cash flow to stimulate the economy. And it's interesting because, of course, it runs completely counter to what you see the head of CMHC saying, where he's trying to clamp everything down, shorten amortizations, reduce people's ability to even qualify, you know, demand side economics. Whereas you have an otherwise, the other end of the spectrum, this economist saying, you know, look, I don't have any skin in the game. I'm not the head of CMHC. I'm not a realtor. I'm not a broker. I'm just an observer, a dispassionate observer. And you guys have a problem where you're paying your mortgages down too fast. Yeah. More of that payment should be able to go to consumer goods. Yeah. And
all of it, but you know, we all know those who care to. I'm on the radio some Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning, at actually also a gold and silver kind of a show. I'm sort of the oddball in real estate. But we debated the head of CMHC as to what could possibly be his motivation. First of all, is it his job to talk about the economy, or is it his job to provide mortgages and home ownership and all of those kind of very logical things CMHC should be doing, and is making a profit. Dustan knows better than I do, but some 17 billion in profit and 10 billion right through the last financial crisis. So you'd think he'd be on our side. Oh, but we have terrible mortgage defaults, do we? No, we don't. And he uses that against us as well, saying since we don't have any mortgage defaults, that's even worse, right? Because, because now we don't have any money at all to spend on the economy. But I want to bring it back to us as individuals. And if I can leave with, I understand as, you know, more than half of you are new into the business. I feel for you because of all these various opinions out there about the future. But I want to tell you, you have absolutely no right to be miserable. You don't. I mean, the facts are against you if you want to be miserable. I mean, you want to look at bad things. I had 65 books that were written from 1970 to 2000. And for some reason, I quit looking at them then. But there were 65 books with the title Depression, Deflation, Crash, Monetary Crisis, and so on. And they had all had one thing in common. Oh, actually two. They all predicted the end of the world in one way or the other. They all wanted us to buy gold. Oh, well, I guess there's three. But the most important one, none of them came true. There's always people that play on our fears. Now, if we believe now, as the conspiracy theorists see the whole world going to end, maybe it does. But if it does, then we're all in the same boat. But I think far more important, we need to be as individuals, and particularly in the business. I mean, as a mortgage broker, you're in the best possible world. Maybe a realtor has the other one as well, because you can make as much money as you want. But you can't make it from a defensive position being, oh, well, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm an old branch manager. And in the 70s, when my salespeople It was a little different. I was more opinionated then. I'm much more mellow now. But then my favorite words were watch my lips. And I would say, watch my lips. If a customer comes in your car and he sits down and says, what do you think about the economy? If you commiserate with him and say, yeah, what is it? Watch me hitting you with my, we used to have those large telephones, car telephones. We didn't have computers then. Watch me hit you with that when you get back in the office.
There you go, Ozzie, one of those.
Yeah, you really have one. But that was the point was that here's the customer. He works himself and his wife through that they really would like to buy a house. They told their parents we would like to go in a house. The father gives them a hard time. Why would you want to do that now? The mother, Jesus, you would have some money in the bank. The guys at the office are miserable. And he goes to his realtor and his mortgage broker, and they're both trying to talk him out of it, or they're trying to get on his good side. What he needs is backbone. And so, well, I understand how you feel. You know, the old feel felt found for those of you that have been around a little bit. We understand how you feel. Everybody feels that way. But they found that if they did well-researched real estate, the one that I'm showing you here this morning, and they bought a home, they would have been better off without any exception, regardless of whether prices increased or not, because of the ability to gain equity and how it makes you feel. We overlook how, as a homeowner, I don't know, there's something about it. This is mine. Okay, a tenant is okay too, but this is mine. And so what the customer looks from us as mortgage brokers or as realtors on any kind of sale is that backbone. And see yourself, you're in a hurricane, no doubt about it, a hurricane of bad news, fake news. I mean, you want to really have problems. We have an election coming, we have a virus, all that. You know, and I hate to belittle it, but you're in the middle. You're that eye of the hurricane. Your friends, your family, your kids, your customers, they all look at you. And what they want is belief in the future.
Well, and Ozzie, as you're sharing those thoughts, it takes me back to 2008, and I remember you sharing a lot of these same terms. The comment that we live in the most underreported inflation of all time, and that gave me such a great talking point, because people would say, "Oh, inflation, you know, blah blah blah," and I'm like, look at the cost of housing. Like that's not actually factored in properly into that index.
Oil wasn't either.
Yeah, and oil wasn't, which is like mind-blowing that they don't have those key things. Like, how do you ignore those things? But I remember specifically one client. It was a close friend of a friend of mine, and in fact, that friend of mine is going to be on this show tomorrow. And it was a close friend of his, and he was like, yeah, you know, I think we're going to pull back. We're not going to do anything. And the broker that he'd been working with had said, yeah, you know, it really looks like the end of the world, you know, in a nutshell. You know, prices are probably going to come down, you know, 20%, 30%. Started making predictions, started assigning numbers. And my friend Willie said, you know, just have a conversation with these clients for me, because you guys seem to have a different perspective. And I remember saying, well, it's not so much my perspective, it's Ozzie's perspective, but I'll echo it. And I said, look, everybody needs to live somewhere. And I think these words are as true today as they are in 2008. You've got young children. You need to put a roof over their head. You want them to go to a school. You want them to go to the brand new school being built across the street from the townhouse development you're looking at buying in. So it's not about where the value of this property goes in the next 3 years, 5 years. That doesn't matter. Your kids are going to go to that school for the next 7 years. Your youngest isn't even going to enter the school for 2 more years. So you're going to live across the street from this school for 10 years. It's close to your work. It's close to the school. It ticks all the boxes. You're going to be paying your own mortgage down rather than paying somebody else's mortgage down. Yeah. And if the value just stays flat, you win. If the value goes down 10%, you still win, because you've paid your mortgage off more than 10% of the value of the property. And you've got stability. You're not being evicted. You're not being reno-evicted. You don't have the owners moving back into the property. Like, you're not getting disrupted, and you're not having to move your kids to a new school catchment. You're not suddenly in 20 minutes.
History is on your side. That's what I'm saying, is we're not making this up. I mean, if you look, you can say, well, Milton Friedman, he didn't know what he was talking about, or Galbraith, all these people. Well, maybe. But the reality is that we've been printing more money all the time. And currently, we have the mother of all money creation ever. And why we would think that will not settle down into hard assets of any kind. Maybe we can just go for 1 minute as to what kind of inflation is inflation. People are always saying, Ozzie, I can't possibly say it's inflation. The commodity sector is way down. The commodity prices, in fact, up until this year, were actually all of the stocks were down. And so you can't really argue that. And well, the thing is this, on inflation and hard assets, which always happens when you create money out of thin air and that money competes with the money you and I earn, that inflation in hard assets, or that inflation of the money supply always settles into hard assets. It always has. 2 years ago, somebody paid $450 million for a painting. Why? Because she was able to get it. You know, the point was the money was there. The commodity downturn is an economic situation. You could actually have a deflation at the same time as we have an inflation. You have a deflation in the commodity sector because China buys fewer natural resources from us because they sell fewer cars to Europe or whatever it is. There's some economic reason for it. And when people saying, well, we're going to have bread lines, absolute nonsense. No millennial will stand in a bread line because we have this total collapse. No, what we will have though, we have industry by industry collapses. Maybe Dustan had a beautiful you know, vinyl record store, and it wasn't a $10 billion industry. Then I came along with CDs. He was in a boom, he was in a bust, I was in a boom, and in a little while, Dustan reinvented himself and he created CDs and or videos or DVD,
digital music,
whatever,
digital music players, yeah.
And throughout the economy, we now have the situation where we can both at the same time. And you know what? All of that is irrelevant. What is most relevant, and that's what I'd like to re-emphasize. I know that Dustan is a real good person. He is. I don't want you to misunderstand, but he believes that we somehow should be for the needy people, the lonely people, the single people. There might be a reason for that.
Just think, be kind. All I said,
well,
be kind.
It isn't that he's single for it. It's just he just beats them off with a stick, and he's too damn choosy. But that's another story. Comes from somebody who's married a long time. But the point is that we are in this business in a key position to, at least if we don't influence, not disinfluence, if there's such a word. A person that has found the nerve to say, you know what, I'm going to be out there buying. Imagine in May, I write a publication called OZZIE'S. That's OZBUZZ. You can find me at ozzbuzz.ca. I have 22,000 subscribers that gave me their email because that's what I want. But it's free. And the idea in it, I wrote in March that I felt that the virus may be over, or the high would be in April, and I thought we might taper into the summer and we might have a second wave. But the point is, what actually happened was that people went out and they bought real estate like there's no tomorrow. And so what we need to do as our individuals, stop listening to all the negatives and saying, what are the facts? Are we in an inflationary world? Heck yes. Now, if you can't agree with that, then of course, if you believe in a deflationary world, then roll up into a little fetal position and put all your money in the bank. And you know, the thing is, you can't live that way, right? So if you believe there's an inflationary world, then you ask yourself, what is the trend in the marketplace? Where are people moving? Because by the way, OZZIE'S number 39 explains to me a whole reason of inflation versus deflation. Number 40 talks about trend. Number 41 talks about the idea of cycles. And when you have put that all together, thinking and thoughtfully, and you give it to your client, you know that you've done the best job possible for them, because it's not all real estate that's good, but maybe what they want to select for their home is. And so going back to the wonderful person that Dustan is, he says, you know, we should be kind. Of course we should be kind, but that's not our job. I'm sorry. Like I say, I love you. And I want you to be kind to me too, right? But your job is more than that. You know, when you're kind, when that single person who feels lonely and lost calls you and says, would I qualify for mortgage? And saying, well, look, let me salute you for that. Because, and then you give them all the reasons why you think he made a good decision or she made a good decision. That's being more kind than to commiserate. I don't know why you're living in an apartment, obviously, and you can't get out. No. It's not your job. You're not there to make economic decisions just like Mr. Siddle isn't. You say to do more. Your job is to find somebody, the solution. Now let's look at it. You are an expert. Some of you are in this business as mortgage brokers already say for you know, a long time. You have forgotten more than a new mortgage broker will learn in the next 10 years. Value that. You know what? You are really needed. It's a profession where we always used to say, oh, well, you know, mortgage brokers are all the same. No, they're not. If you have a quality leader like Dustan, who you can follow, who does videos every day, my God, I don't know how he does it. Now I know why he doesn't have a girlfriend. Okay, anyway, the point is, I think he has a girlfriend, like I said, several. But the point is, the idea that we somehow must commiserate with everybody is wrong. What they're looking for is support for the decision they're making. And it's a confusing world, just like we are confused there. Look, if you are strong, what does your wife or your husband want to see? You want to be strong. This is still a good world. I mean, we have more deals right now than in Vancouver, at least, than at any other time in the last 10 years for an August. And I'm just still, yeah, but September is going to be bad, or October. Maybe in 2022 it's going to be. We're always looking for something that could go wrong.
Yeah, everybody's always looking for the black cloud, and it is not our role ever to be the black cloud. It's like you say, Ozzie, I remember a conversation I had with a client who I've known many, many, many years. I knew him for a decade before I got into this business. So we've known each other, say 15, 16 years at this point. And it was 2016, 2017, a lot of changes in the lending market, the lending landscape. Everything was tightening up. It was becoming very difficult. And that was what a lot of brokers were doing. They were commiserating with each other about how difficult it is. And I made the mistake of treating that client differently than I would treat a regular client because of the relationship we had. And so when he started asking me about, you know, qualifying for a mortgage on this very unique property, I started listing off all the ways in which we could no longer get that done. All the different, like, I started at the bottom of the list of all the people who won't do it, rather than just starting at the top of the list and saying, well, here's how it gets done. And he stopped me, and it was one of those really sort of mobile, really sticky moments. Like, it really sticks in my mind. He stopped me and he said, Dustan, you're giving me problems. I call you to give me solutions. Yeah. And I was like, man, thank you. And we do that with friends and family, I think, more than we do it with strangers.
Well, our staff.
You know, we're comfortable.
As managers, you simply have no right to share your doubts. You know, 1% doubt and you're out is one of our slogans. The moment you show in management that your doubts about the world and the business you're in, really you're out. You have, you know, I'm saying, I'm not making this up. We're not sort of Pollyanna. The facts are that had you bought a house or a condo anywhere, you'd have done better if you didn't. Very simple. You could have maybe done even better had you bought in the right area, but all that's irrelevant. So the argument that people have about, yeah, this is totally different is really not true. It is not only not different, it's almost the same. It just has because we have more money out, there's more zeros out there. Yes, there's different kind of problems, and that I think will continue. It's part of our life. We also as humans have a propensity to shake off problems and to create new environments. Look, the idea of Zoom right now is opportunity. The idea that older people, and I predicted that in February already, long before the virus really hit, older people are moving out of town. You know, now the old guy never turned on a computer. Now he pushes a button and the stuff is there the next day. He says to Martha, let's move out of our $2 million wartime bungalow and let's move to Vancouver Island, or let's move to small town Ontario. We always wanted to do that anyhow because I don't have to go shopping. I can just push a button. And the millennial couples, my daughter and they have 2 kids and a husband, they actually like each other, and everybody talks about getting divorces. And no, but there's a lot of people that actually like being at home. They're thinking of selling their $1.5 million home, moving to a smaller town in British Columbia, be mortgage free. It's actually a benefit. And so many benefits are out there that on the mortgage side, don't you think you need it? The confusion in the mortgage market makes I'm in the sort of on the fringes of the business and I don't understand what it is. And somebody comes to you and you have maybe it's a commercial mortgage. Maybe you can become a specialist in commercial finance or the most difficult financing. You have niche areas where you can tell a story as to why they should deal with you. Never forget, by the way, in advertising today, you must be storytelling. Make it personal because we're all at home. Everything is very personal to us. They're going to deal with somebody that is not too, there has to be positive and then is not too bland, right? You have to tell a reason why I should be dealing with you.
Well, the first-time home buyers are a great one for that because, you know, the majority of us have all been first-time home buyers at some point. And if you really sit down and have a conversation with, you know, family members, whoever you were involved, maybe somebody helped you with down payment, maybe you were buying that property with a significant other, whatever the story was behind that first purchase, if you really think about it and go back, you'll start to remember all of the stress points you had. I mean, my father saying to me, "Kid, the woman you're buying this house from for $168,000, she paid $42,000 11 years ago. It's gone up 400%. It's a bubble. What are you thinking paying $168,000 for a detached house in Greater Vancouver? It's madness." And I love sharing that story. And you're right, Ozzie, like what a great advertising sort of slogan it would be to say, "Hey, are you a first-time home buyer? I was too. Give me a call and let me tell you my story."
100%.
And share your story of your fears.
This whole new world, and Dustin is the best example. In Canada, 88% of Canadian internet users are also digital video viewers. We are video oriented. So have a video on your website, tell your story. One of the biggest marketers I ever met in my life is from Florida, and he kept hammering with email. And I said, "Why are you sending this to me? I bought everything you have for sale already." And he was sort of laughing. Well, he says 96% of the people that I sent this stuff that they throw it away anyways, but the 4% that want to buy my stuff, they want to read more, not less. But one of his secrets he shared, he always had something personal. He would say, "I'm now at the Orlando airport with my son. He's only 5 years old. He's running all over the place. I'm trying to find him. But when we catch the plane, we're going to be at tonight at the meeting, such and such." It's that personal thing today that we need. It's my view. I think it's one of the reasons why, I got 30,000 followers on the internet. And honestly, my 6,500 on Twitter, I have no idea who they are. I have 5,000 on Facebook, and Facebook stops me to go more than. So I created a website for my business, and there's 2,500 people there, and I got 5,000 on LinkedIn. By the way, if you're not on anything, you must be on LinkedIn. I think it is the best money generator for professionals. But the point is, you're generating names, and you have an opportunity now that never before existed, because we always want to call our old clients, right? Jesus, I should call good old George who bought something for me 20 years ago. And we never had really a reason to call good old George. But now there is a reason saying, "Hey, George, I was just looking through my files. I'm wondering who you are. How you are. How did you survive?" Imagine we did a study, and you realize when he said to me, "You want to say a few words?" I love the sound of my own voice, so I just bear with me, right? But we just did a study with all of us. We had 20 people in a mastermind group, and we said, "Oh, how many people could I actually call? How many people do I know?" And you could do that exercise quickly in your head. If somebody put you on the spot, how many people do you know right now? How many is it? Anybody. Please, anybody. Most people said somewhere between 80 and 120. When we sat down and spent a whole morning, everybody that we knew, from the hockey coach to his mother to my uncle to whatnot, the minimum we had was 550 people, and the maximum was as many as 1,500 people that we know. Now imagine, you call up 500 people and tell them, "I got news for you. I got a 1.7% 10-year loan for CMHC for that multifamily." "Or you're not multifamily?" "Well, for single family home, I can get 2.2%. Never been there before. Do you know what it means?" And tell them.
And Ozzie,
I'm sorry. So the business that has been created that wasn't there before in this pandemic is enormous.
Well, and to loop it back for a second to that client that called me that I mentioned that was looking for a solution. All I really needed to do was say, "Yes, I can get that done for you, and here's what it looks like." And the thing was, I was making a judgment of my own. I was making an assumption of my own. And I hate that word, that because of all of the previous financing I'd done for this gentleman that had come in around that 3% mark, he was going to be expecting 3% again. And that was going to be the most important thing to him. And that was completely false. All that mattered to him was getting it closed fast. Right. And we wound up closing it at 8%. And he was completely happy with that, and I could have started right there and it would have been fine. Because even though a million
talk about his mother or your mother, the point is, 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. I just want to leave you with this story, and because I firmly believe that your success is in direct proportion The marketplace is between your own ears, nowhere else. It isn't in your newspapers, it isn't on it. It's always between your own ears. And there is this story about the European Common Market, and the idea was that it was a sign at the airport and said, it would be hell if the Germans were the police, the British the chefs, the French the mechanics, the Swiss would be the lovers, and the whole thing organized by the Italians. That would be hell. On the other hand, heaven would be the Swiss would be, sorry, the Germans would be the mechanics, the French the chefs, the British would be the police, the Italians the lovers, and the whole thing organized by the Swiss, right? Well, first of all, I think this is terrible. I mean, you know, what about Germans? But anyhow, what makes you think that the Italians are good lovers? Is there any good Italian you made love to lately? Have you met any Germans that made bad love? Have you ever had any bad food in England? Oh, okay, England, okay. But the point is this.
Hey, fish and chips. There's a lot of good chippies in England. Lots of great fish and chips.
Right. So the point is, though, that we naturally assume certain things about certain people and certain nations. Why is that? Because we are pre-programmed internally to our own tunes. And while you might be tuned into 91.4, if internally you're tuned into 91.3, even that small difference means you're not successful, because we're looking at life through our eyes, not with our eyes, based on the program we have inside. And if we don't work on us saying, you know what, all this negative stuff out there, it's just not me. I'm going to go over to the bright side, get away from the dark side. Take me away from all the misery out there, the groups, the this and that, and go into what I want to be a good mortgage broker. I want to do well. I'm in a business where the people are actually going to be with me forever. Do you know anybody out there that gives all his financial information to somebody else and then decides, oh no, now I'm going to give it again to somebody else again? He will always call you back. If on average people move every 4 years, in the next 20 years, that's 5 times. What is the average commission for a mortgage broker? 10,000? What is it?
No, call it $3,000.
Okay, 3,000. Well, then as I sit here for the next 20 years, I'm worth $60,000 for you. Now treat me as such. You know, do the best you can for me. Give me information even after I bought. Make sure that I understand, that I tell the stories to my customers saying, because of you, I've grown to this area. And here are some pictures of my dog. I mean, I'm being silly, but the thing is, we forget we're dealing with humans that are scared and they want certainty. Now, if you're the one who can give it to them, they're not only coming to you, they'll also bring their friends to you. And by the way, never forget to ask them. By the way, your son's still playing hockey? What about your coach? Didn't he need a new mortgage? I mean, put the ideas in their mind, in their church. The business around you is plentiful and the competition is waning. They're scared, they're running for the hills. This is a glorious time to be a mortgage broker. I wish I was.
It is. I mean, it's obviously the world is not without its challenges, but brokers are not challenged right now as far as business opportunities. There's massive opportunity. And like you say, I use your line all the time. The only market that matters is the one between your own 2 ears, because it's so true. I mean, no matter what is happening in the world, it's been proven over and over through one version of a crisis after another that we are really lucky. We are really well positioned to be in the real estate and the real estate finance worlds. Everybody's got to live somewhere. And I think when that uncertainty is happening in so many other areas of life, people more than ever want the certainty of owning their own home. That's the bottom line. They want that little bit more control that they have over their future. They're not going to get evicted. They control the future of the home. And like you say, the interest rates are ridiculous. I mean, there's no hurdle to buying right now, other than the other 38 people that are also showing up to buy. And yeah, so it's getting off the sidelines and getting in the game. Ozzie, this is like a massive dose of optimism and a lot of great points. And like you say, you know, your mastermind group, oh, I think I have 80 to 120 people to call. And then they dig down and really think about it. And no, they have 550 to 1,500 people to pick up the phone. And I say it all the time, you've got 5,000 right there on LinkedIn. You can pick up the phone and call every single one of them. Why not?
Yeah, it's no question about it. Like right now, and maybe I should finish with that, we have our Land Rush conference. We have an annual
Yes,
conference
please.
that's usually in the spring and in the fall. Well, normally we have, of course, we have them inside a hotel. Well, we can't do that. So we have 9 speakers on September the 19th. We decided we're going to have a Zoom one. So we will have the Zoom speakers like we did before. And we focus like before. We have a guy from Phoenix. We moved to Phoenix in 2011. And almost every single person has not been just become 1 millionaire. It's a double to triple millionaire. It's just been mind-boggling how the U.S. And by the way, that was an interesting thing in 2011. Everybody says, go away from the U.S. You know, run like hell. And we said, that's crazy. The U.S. will be just fine. Anyway, the point is that this land conference, we have all of our normal speakers. And then we will be, the beauty of it is now they will all be taped. And then we launch a website to all the people that bought the ticket and have access to those speakers for a while longer. And then the ticket is good for February 27 when we actually have the physical, hopefully, ability to meet. And if not, there'll be another Zoom. But the thing is, you know, we have so far, we just launched, we only decided to do it last week when we were sure we couldn't have 500 people, we wouldn't be allowed. And in a very short period of time, we sold 300 tickets, and we will have our 500 tickets sold again like we always had, because the interest is there. People are confused and they want certainty. And that's what you and your business have to give more of, and that's what I have to give more of. And Dustan, of course, the bright shining star. You have a leader like no other company.
Well, look, I mean, hey, I appreciate the kind words, Ozzie, but like I say, a lot of that shininess I picked up from you, man. And I've dropped the OZZIE'S.ca web domain in the chat box. I've dropped the Jurock.com website in the chat box if you're interested in that Land Rush conference. I've attended the Land Rush conference many times in years gone by. Again, it's just an opportunity to have experts in real estate sharing intel with you that you're not going to get in a Globe and Mail newspaper article. And it makes for some really great conversational sound bites with clients when you're talking to a real estate investor, when you're talking to a first-time home buyer. There will be gold nuggets shared in that Land Rush event. So I wasn't even thinking about doing the sort of the hardline promo for you here, Ozzie, but I can't not do it. So, you know, if you guys have the time, make the time. You know, it doesn't matter if you have the time. It's all going to be recorded. So right. Take the time to register for it and make that happen. But Ozzie, I've got a hard stop coming up shortly because my leader, Gary Morris, is doing a kickoff to, you know, kick everyone's butt back into gear here, sort of a back to school, back to work mode. And so by the way, for the viewers, if you go to the Facebook page, type in Gary Morris, you'll find the link there. I've shared it in the Be the Better Broker group as well for his call coming up at 10, and Todd Duncan will be joining him briefly on that call as well. So that's going to be another 45 minutes of rah-rah. So I didn't mean to cut you off there, Ozzie, but I definitely wanted to get that in there.
Pleasure to be here. I wish you well.
Ozzie, thank you again so much. I always enjoy our conversations, and as I say, positive, positive, positive. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You bet. We'll talk again soon. Cheers, everybody.